Hi, welcome to Hell to Pay. This is Amr,
This is Elle.
and we're back again for another episode. And Sipo is not with us, unfortunately. This is the Hardy episode. Me and Sipo rotate, and Elle is the one constant fixture, the sun around which the planets orbit, if you will. So today I'd like to talk about a very interesting incident that happened in Egypt in 2012 called the Port Said football massacre. Or riot, depending on what side of the fence you're on. And it's basically what happened was that February 1st, 2012, Cairo's Al-Ahly Football Club was going to an away game in Port Said to play the Masry Football Club, who are based in the city of Port Said, which is a city on the Suez Canal. They were in second place in the league. They were 1 point behind Haras El Hodood, the Border Guards Football Club. And a 1,200 strong contingent of Ahly Ultras made its way as the away support. It's hard to explain to our American listeners, but in most of the rest of the world, people follow their sports clubs on away games. It's a thing, but also like football support is a political thing in a lot of the rest of the world, because football tends to be vehicles for community organizing, for mobilizing people. However, in this match, as the episode as I mentioned earlier, a riot happened, a massacre happened. We'll get into why even the name is controversial, whether to call it a massacre or a riot. But ultimately, 72 Ahly fans were killed in this rioting the ramifications were so large that it led to the suspension of the Egyptian Premier League for 2 years, the early retirement of Ahly and Egypt striker Mohamed Abu Trika, and also there were a lot of deep questions about the level of involvement that the Egyptian government was whether they were involved in the collusion between the sort of government and the Masry Ultras, who presumably were the ones who charged it at the Ahly fans, and whether this was simply a question of hooliganism or something much, much, much darker. But first, I was hoping to go into the background as to why this is so relevant. So if you've been living under a rock for however many years, something in January 2011, something happened called the Arab Spring. Now, the name Arab Spring in and of itself is quite controversial. It's hard because it aggregates a bunch of disparate events that, yes, happened in the same time in the same region, but were driven by fundamentally different causes and different processes, which is a series of revolutions against incumbent governments, starting with Tunisia in December 2010, moving to Egypt in January 2011, and expanding to Syria, Yemen, and Bahrain, with lesser protests in other countries, but those are the main protests of the Arab Spring. Egypt became the sort of case study of this. And by the way, Elle, feel free to interrupt me if you want to.
Yeah, I just have one question.
Yeah.
Do people in Arab countries, do they call it Arab Spring, and do
No.
they think of it as one event, or is it just
No.
like the Egyptian uprising, the Bahraini uprising?
Yes. No, yes. No one says Rabi' al-Arabi except for really annoying academics that are very wrong. In the sort of colloquial memory, in the cultural memory, it is like, in Bahrain we call it the events, al-ahdath, which is a very sort of ominous, like just the events of 2011, kind of like how the British called the troubles,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was about to say that. Yeah, just that very ominous name.
Yeah, in Bahrain they're called the ahdath. In Egypt it's just the Egyptian Revolution. In Syria it's the war because it evolved into a war. Same thing with Yemen. In Tunis it's the Tunisian Nahda, which is like the Renaissance or the uprising. But yeah, in all cases, their self-conceptualization is such that while there was influences from one to the other, at the end of the day, they were distinct, separate events. Because the goals were different, right? Like, in Egypt's case, Mubarak was an ally of the US. Same with Bahrain. In Syria, it wasn't so. In Tunis, it's more complicated. And in different groups mobilized differently. Like in Egypt you had the Muslim Brotherhood, in Tunis you had the unions, as well as the Muslim Brotherhood affiliate. In Bahrain it was a more sectarian affair. Same thing with Syria, though the sects were between government and anti-government were reversed. In Yemen there's a tribal element as well. It's just not Arab Spring. Like, is a very sort of umbrella term. I don't think it's productive. I use it because a lot of people understand it that way, but I wouldn't call it the Arab Spring.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And just another dumb question is because you always hear like, yeah, when things are kind of like very reductively talked about from the Middle East in the West, it's always like, oh, yeah, the Muslim Brotherhood is like the one opposition to like every government that is like sort of across the region. Everyone has their own kind of Muslim Brotherhood, and it's, against whether it is like a, ultra religious government or a military government or a, secular government or a communist government. Is that kind of a thing?
Yes and no. The Muslim Brotherhood was, up until post 2011, usually one of the best ways to mobilize people. Like they were one of the only remaining organizations that had numbers and had deep connection with the communities in which they served, right? Because the Muslim Brotherhood, more than anything, was a social welfare organization as well, right? They were providing healthcare, childcare, jobs to underserved communities, especially in Egypt. Is the classic example after Sadat's infitah policies, where the state sort of neoliberalized, and he gutted all of Nasser's old social welfare programs. The vacuum for those programs, the Brotherhood moved in, right? The Brotherhood became the way in which services were delivered to places that were neglected by the state, that were forgotten about, that created a very robust base of supporters, and it's part of the Muslim Brotherhood's broader policy of da'wah. So it goes back to a debate in the early to mid 20th century between different Islamic thinkers, and I can go into it in another episode if we go into the background of the Muslim Brotherhood, which deserves its own series. Even
that'd be really cool.
Yeah, because the two main thoughts between different Islamic politics, right, Islamist politics, in contrast to like the secular pan-Arabism and so forth, Baathism, socialism, all of those different strands, the Islamist strain can be divided into two: jihadism and da'wah. Da'wah supposes that jihadism is very easy. It's a belief that you have to wage political and military war against illegitimate regimes, and how you define legitimacy differs depending on the faction. But the opposite of that is da'wah, which says that you can't overthrow the current regime unless you prepare society for a good Islamic alternative. It's putting the superstructure before the base. It's saying that everyone has to be ideologically prepared to live in an Islamic country before you try to seize the political power. And that's
what like
Muslim
Marxism-Leninism.
Essentially, yeah. I mean, it's the opposite of that. Marxism-Leninism is very similar to jihadism, where it's like you have to seize power now. Whereas this is very like Trotskyite in its way, where it's like, no, you have to be pure first, and once you're sufficiently pure, then you can seize power. But this was the driving force of the Brotherhood for a long period, until it had its own divisions with Sayyid Qutb in the 60s and 70s, and then. But to go back to the mid 2000s, and to answer your question, by the mid 2000s there were only two forces capable of opposing or otherwise contending with the states, the regimes, if you will. Those were the militaries of those regimes and the Muslim Brotherhood, and different regimes juggled that balance differently. So, for example, the Muslim Brotherhood wasn't necessarily oppositional in places like Turkey, which they became the state, right, with Erdogan. Similarly, in Qatar, they became an arm of Qatari foreign policy. They were absorbed into the state. With Bahrain, it's more complicated, because with Bahrain there's a lot of like sectarianism, so the Muslim Brotherhood was used to counteract the Shia and so forth. But essentially, it's all a symbol. All of this is to say it's a symbol of the death of the left, right? There was no longer a left to speak of, so the only mobilizing force was Islamism of its various strains. Now, I'm being a bit harsh, there were unions, and the unions, in particularly in Tunisia, were very strong. In Egypt, to a lesser degree, not so much in Bahrain by the time of 2011. But the unions also played a role in the 2011 uprisings by mobilizing mass strikes and so forth. But the Muslim Brotherhood was the only one who could like bring massive numbers onto the street and organized enough top down that it can negotiate with different governments and force concessions, which is what happened in Egypt, and we can get into that later. But yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, keep going. I'll stop trying to derail you.
No. Feel free to derail. Yeah. So yeah, in January 2011, the Egyptian people, following what's happening in Tunisia, protest this ossified, decrepit Mubarak regime, the president Hosni Mubarak and his cronies. One of the big things that will come up later as to why Mubarak was overthrown is also because at the time, in 2011, it was obvious that he was grooming his sons to succeed him. I think Gamal was one of his sons, and he had the other one. I forget their names. There are two of them. But there were elements of the Egyptian military that were not particularly thrilled about him trying to create primogeniture succession. But in 2011, all of that went out the window when the protesters occupied Tahrir Square. You probably saw the newscast and the video streams of all these people on the square chanting, demanding the downfall of the regime, etc. But it took a while for things to really get going, because initially they had occupied the square. And the initial response was a classic Egyptian response, a classic Middle Eastern response in all of these states, really, which is, to go in hard against the protesters. And this culminated in February 2nd, 2011, which is this waves of pro-Mubarak gangs. They're called Baltagiya in Egypt, which is like, Baltagiya as a term is like, just like, as its most reductive, it just means thug, but it's usually used to refer to like pro-government plainclothes security personnel, like not necessarily secret police, but guys who like are recruited by the government. They're paid some number of money to like do the dirty work of like attacking people. And they attacked Tahrir Square, and there was like running street battles. Some have called it the Battle of the Camel. It's not commonly called that in Arabic. It's an English thing. The Anglophone press like calling it that, because
I've never heard that.
Yeah, some of the Baltagiya were riding camels, which, like, camelry and cavalry do have their uses. There's a reason. I don't know if you have that in Australia or the US, but in Canada, people joke about the Mounties being the Mounties, but there's a reason all the police forces here have mounted units, and it's for crowd control. Cavalry is a great way of dealing with big crowds, because horses are really fucking big and can really fuck your day up. So one of the interesting aspects of that street fighting on that day and on the days prior and after is Ahly and Zamalek ultras. Ahly and Zamalek are the two football clubs in Cairo, and they're like the eternal rivals, right? Like they're your Rangers and Celtic, they're your Lazio and Roma. They have that intra-city rivalry. But they unified. They took. They essentially did a truce to fight against the government, and they were like manning checkpoints to protect the square from infiltrators. And there was running battles, because the football ultras in a lot of parts of the world have experience fighting cops, like whether that's like Russia or Turkey or Latin America. They're one of the few groups of people that have experience in street fighting with cops. Now, a lot of these ultras are also very much infiltrated by cops, so like that's the other aspect of that. But in the case of Egypt, they were some of the most vociferous anti-government voices well before 2011, with things like chanting and banners in the stadia. But when this kicked off in Tahrir Square, the ultras were like, right in the thick of it, like, in fist fighting with like these fucking riot cops and Baltagiya. Now,
ultras are like traditionally really good at like strategy, like street fighting strategy and stuff, because they're used to being like kettled and stuff by cops, and so they have like ways of getting around things and like literally doing human wave attacks and stuff like that. Like they know what they're doing.
Well, they also have the sort of pre-existing like bonds. I don't want to get too metaphysical, but there's a level of like community, if you want to call it that. I don't know if that's the right word.
Brotherhood.
But sure. I mean, yeah, I was trying to avoid that word in particular.
Camaraderie, yeah.
But you mean, like, you know, when you're fighting in the streets, right? It's getting yourself to a battle is half the equation. The other half is not shitting yourself and running away as soon as, like, skulls are being cracked, right?
Yeah.
And one of the reasons people don't run away is they don't want to look bad in front of their friends. They don't want to be the pussy in front of their friends. I'm sorry to be crude about that, but, like,
yeah.
A big aspect of military training, once conscription was sort of overruled in many parts of the world, was designing these, like, hazing rituals in the military that were designed to develop camaraderie. And part of that camaraderie was, like, trying to get you to, like, feel a deeper sense of loyalty to your comrades in the military or in whatever unit you're in, such that, you know, when the bullets are flying or when the truncheons are being unleashed, you don't run away. You're holding your ground, if not for yourself, then for your whatever loyalty you feel for your comrades, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and you know, maybe that sounds a bit too high-nosed and high-browed, but, like, there is a reason that ultras have been known to, like, you know, fight cops in the streets. Like, Egypt is one example, Turkey is another example, the Brazilian ultras during the fucking protests against the tickets, the increased ticket prices. Vincent Bevins has a good aspect of that in If We Burn. And if you want more about how ultras are involved in these things, there's a book by James Montague called 1312 Among the Ultras. It does
fantastic.
It's a really good book. It's a really good book. I recommend it. So anyways, ultras of the Ahly and Zamalek were, you know, up in the street here. And this all led to February 11th, 2011, when Mubarak announces he is stepping down and to form an interim transitional government led by the Egyptian Supreme Council of Armed Forces, the SCAF, and the chair of SCAF, which is Field Marshal Mohammed Tantawi. Now, this goes back to when I was answering your question. The thing that the traditional counterbalance for the Muslim Brotherhood was always the militaries of the various governments, right? And when you lose the military, khalas, there's no going back from there. But it wasn't so much as the revolution succeeding as, like, negotiations between the Brotherhood and SCAF over the spoils, right? Like a realignment. Like, it wasn't the important thing to understand is that the military and the Muslim Brotherhood aren't mutually exclusive. They're not entirely oppositional. Both parties are open to the idea of negotiating with one another when the time is right to re-legislate or rewrite, if you will, the terms of social organizing, right?
Yeah.
And in that sense, it's not a revolution so much as, like, managed concessions, if you will. Anyways, that's just by the by. Parliamentary elections are held in the summer of 2011, with presidential elections meant to happen in 2012. And later on, it was revealed, and there's still, like, allegations over how true this is, but the deal that the SCAF made with the Muslim Brotherhood when they forced Mubarak to step down was that the Brotherhood can contest the parliamentary elections if they will allow the military to, like, take the presidential elections through, like, their different front parties and so forth. But in the meantime, there's this transitional government while this is all happening. But while the revolution was happening, the Egyptian Premier League season, the 2011-2012 season, had began on October 14th, a bit late because of the revolution. And it involved 19 teams instead of 16 because the 2010-2011 season was suspended because of the revolution. So relegation was not enforced. So they still had the three clubs, no clubs went down. The Ahly had won the last 7 consecutive titles. They're one of the most successful clubs in the world. And before February 1st, 2012, this was, like, during the season, Haras El Hodood, which is the border guards club, was top of the league, 37 points, Ahly with 36. And Ahly was going to Port Said to face Masry Football Club in the same anniversary of the Battle of the Camel, a so-called Battle of the Camel, which, again, I've only seen it described as such with Anglophone press. It kind of annoys me, but, you know, here we are. They were going to Port Said to face Masry, 1 point behind, and during that entire season, the 2011-2012 season, since it restarted, the Ahly Ultras were very anti-SCAF. They were very anti-interim government. They were very anti-military because they recognized and appreciated that the interim government was a continuation of Mubarak. It wasn't a change. It was a managed concession, right? So they were not shy of making their voices heard there. Now, They just keeping in mind, Ahly was founded in 1907 as Ahly in Arabic means popular, right? And it was founded as a football club for Egyptian students and workers. So it had its base was rooted in the working class neighborhoods of Egypt. Now, most of this has changed in recent times, but it does have like a sort of a history of like, poorer supporters, more traditional working class supporters. And in that sense, it was very anti-government for that reason as well. February 1st, 2012, Ahly arrived in Port Said, and pre-match witnesses claimed that security didn't conduct standard frisking of fans entering the stadium, which is red flag number one because fans are always frisked when they're entering stadiums. There were claims that many Masry fans were allowed into the stadium without tickets, and the Ahly coach at the time, Manuel Jose, a Portuguese coach, the north curve where the Masry fans were sitting in Port Said, displayed a banner reading, "We're going to kill you all." So there's that.
Nice.
So the match begins. Ahly take an early lead, 11th minute. Masry level terms on the 72nd minute with a goal by Mu'min Zakaria. And when it's 1-1, the Masry fans invade the pitch, halting the match for a period. And then they get corralled back into the stands. And Ahly's Hussam Ghali gets 2 quick yellow cards, so the second yellow being a red card. And after he gets sent off, Masry scored 2 more goals, one in the 83rd minute and one in the 90th minute, both by Zakaria and Abdullah Sissé, to end the match 3-1 to Masry. And after every goal, the fans invade the pitch, they get corralled back, they invade the pitch again, they get corralled back, and then when the final whistle is sounded, they invade the pitch again, right? Now, here's where things get tricky. After the final whistle, the fans invade the pitch for the 4th time now. And, it's called a riot, but, it's hardly a riot when there are a lot of red flags. Basically, what happens is the fans charge towards the south curve where these 1,200 Ahly fans are located. Many of them having taken trains and buses from Cairo. It's a very fucking long trip. I don't remember that off the top of my head, but it's several hours long. There are reports that the barriers separating the Masry fans from the Ahly fans were open. Now, just to clarify for our Yank friends, because Yanks love going to sports events and just hanging out with members of the opposing club.
Yelling defense.
Yeah, go X go, Yankees and Mets sitting next to each other, fucking Boston fans sitting next to New York fans. The Americans need to understand that in the rest of the world, fans are separated because of a long history of hooliganism. Like genuine separation. Like you have rows of empty seats between away fans and home fans, and if you're an away fan, you're not allowed to sit in the home section with kit on, with your colors on, because it will cause violence.
So Americans are trauma bonded by paying $500 a ticket and then $30 for a beer.
Yeah, well, no, Americans love fighting in a very sort of individualistic way, where fans will fight in the stands for talking shit or whatever, but it's not organized fighting. It's one divorcee dad with his stomach coming out of his fucking jersey, rolling around on the ground with another divorcee dad or whatever. I've seen those videos. They're kind of really appalling. It's either that or college students fighting, which is also appalling. But neither of them are the sort of fighting you see in hooliganism, right?
Yeah, definitely not.
Yeah, so again, there are multiple witnesses who say that the police opened the barrier separating the home Masry fans from the away Ahly fans. And the Ahly fans were kettled into this away section, and the Masry fans just charged at them with stones, bottles, fireworks, knives, clubs, apparently swords even.
Jesus.
And they just stormed the south curve. And the Masry fans were also attacking the Ahly players on the pitch. And the Ahly players were corralled into the locker room under police protection, while the fans above were going haywire on the Ahly fans. So 74 people were killed in the melee, 72 Ahly fans, plus 1 Masry fan, plus 1 cop. And again, if this was a riot, you'd imagine the casualties would be more even.
And riot denotes up against police, up against state forces, right?
Yeah, exactly. This was very much against the Ahly fans, and And there was, like, if they're sneaking that much weapons and knives in, like obviously people could sneak things in. That's how we get flares and fireworks. But, like, knives and clubs and yeah, it is, you're going in there to fuck someone's day up. Like, there's a level of planning and deliberation here. There's 500 plus injured with stab wounds, broken bones. Apparently some of the fans were snuck into the Ahly player locker rooms, like the away locker rooms, and like you could see like fans bleeding on the table while the players are like sat there in shock. Like some of them were vomiting and things like that.
Yeah, I think I've seen some footage of some of this. Like it's horrible.
Have you seen the footage?
Yeah, I think I've seen photos or footage or something of it. I'm certain.
Yeah, I'll send you links after this. But it's brutal. And apparently there were reports and witnesses that the gates of the south curve were welded shut or locked. Some say locked, some say welded. So like the fans were meant to be trapped inside. And later on, the excuse was that we were locking you in the same way all football fans get locked in. We control when you leave because, the idea is that away fans are escorted to the bus or train stations, which is a common thing. Like fans do get locked in if you're an away fan. But like usually it's like locked up until like the police let you out. But like welded shut is really like not something that happens. At some point the floodlights were turned off, like they were cut. So there was darkness and like there were just, the fans were falling off the upper tier of the stands to the lower tier. Others were dead in the stampede, like it was a crush at the gates. Which, like, honestly, crushes are one of the things I fear, like, the most in my life. Like, I go to concerts quite often, but I really don't like going up in the front. I prefer going, like, to the back of concerts because I hate crushes so much. I hate crowds.
Yeah. I got caught in a football crush once a few years ago in Kyrgyzstan. I happened to be there.
You're smoking opium in Iran and you were in a football riot in Kyrgyzstan? You really are. Like, there is suspicion.
I know.
My co-host might be a spy. I don't know, guys.
I do have the dodgiest passport stamps. But yeah, I happened to be in Kyrgyzstan and the Socceroos, the Australian soccer team, had a World Cup qualifier there. And so we wound up getting tickets and we were outside the stadium and there was like a small group of Australians. So yeah, just hung out with them and they put us in our own little area. And we got outside the stadium and it was just packed with people outside. And there was like started being this riot because people couldn't get in and they were saying, no, your ticket's not valid or it's like fraudulent or whatever. And eventually, there's this full riot, full crush. My feet were like off the ground and I was being like moved around like felt like it was in like a tumble dryer. And there was this like gigantic Australian guy near me. He must have been about 6'5", and I just looked at him and he's crying, and I'm just like, oh fuck. And then eventually, someone who one of the guys.
I thought you were gonna say he was gonna rescue you or something.
Well, yeah, no, we were just like everyone was freaking out because there was about 20, 30 Australians maybe. And at least they're all wearing bright yellow, so I could like see them. And then eventually someone who spoke much better Russian than me was able to speak to a guard and just be like, look, can you just like get us in? And this guy kind of saw what was going on. He's like, yeah, okay, we'll rescue you guys, fuck the locals, but you take any port in a storm at that point. And someone like basically picked me up and like dragged me across the top of people and got me through. And then my arm nearly got broken in the gate. And then so we walk into the stadium and all the seats are full and it's just police and military had walked up and said, no, we're taking these seats. So all the people that had bought tickets were stuck outside.
That is such a Tin Pot regime thing to do. Like the cops being like, we'll all go watch a football game now. Fuck off. This is our stadium. It's so awesome. That's insane.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I digress.
It's also like not to like belabor the point, but pro tip: if you want to invade a country, wait until all their military is in one stadium for some reason.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, Kyrgyzstan just kept having their color revolutions and stuff. So the threat's always from within, I guess.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. Yeah. No. Anyways, where was I? Yeah, so apparently there were witnesses that said that the police didn't interfere. There was no attempt by the police to break up the riot. Like I said, some fans were taken to the Ahly locker room where they died in front of players.
God.
Yeah, which is why some of the players retired early. They were like completely fucked up. Eventually, the military sent helicopters and trucks to bring fans and players and, the dead bodies of the various people back to Cairo after it's, subsided. And the aftermath, anti-SCAF politicians from the Brotherhood to liberals all were accusing the SCAF, the Supreme Council of Armed Forces, of either planning the attack or like encouraging the attack. The Premier League was suspended. It ended up being suspended for 2 years. It resumed in 2013-2014. Hamad Abu Treka, Mohamed Barakat, and Ahmad Mu'tab all announced early retirement because they were just like, these fans were like dying in the fucking locker room. 73 people were arrested, 9 police officers, 2 Masry club officials, and 62 Masry fans. That's the great thing about having a plausible deniability is you can round up like the low-level thugs of the fans and like still have a degree of separation when you want to inflict pain on someone or impose costs, if you will. On 26th of January...
So what was the idea that were the cops the idea was kind of riling up these guys and just getting them...
It was vengeance. It was vengeance for 2011. You hit us on the streets then, we hit you here now.
Yeah.
And to the degree to whether the Masry fans were like actual Masry fans or like plainclothes cops, like I'm sure there were the Masry fans were infiltrated with plainclothes to like rile up the people. But the thing is, once a crowd is riled up, it's very hard to it's easy for a few deliberate people to rile up a crowd and everyone else just gets caught in the moment, right?
Yeah, that's why I was sort of wondering, why they actually wound up arresting the Masry fans. But yeah, like you said, it is that deniability and it's like hey, we're doing something. And because these, idiots got all fired up and charged in with a glass bottle or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting to me when I see like assassination attempts and it's like guys with like extreme mental illness or like weird history of like drugs or whatever, and like it's not that I believe that the deep state is like a ventriloquist with like strings in every corner, but like it is easy to organize assassinations or violence of any kind if you can create enough chaos and violence using just 1 or 2 planted people, if you will, right? Especially in a place like a football stadium where like tensions are already high, people are drinking, people are like, the baseline level of aggro goes up a bit.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's like we talked about in an earlier episode, I can't remember what it was, but I think to do with some like guys who kind of tried to do a January 6 in Michigan over like lockdown or mask mandates or something like that, and wanted to try and kill the governor. And it was just like all of these guys were just completely infiltrated by the cops. And it's always the guy who's most gung-ho for you to do the crime.
Yeah.
It's always the Fed.
It's always feds, yeah. It's feds all the way down. But yeah,
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, so basically, these fans were charged along with the police officers and club officials. The trials were done in January 2013 in Cairo, in New Cairo, because they didn't want to do the trials in Port Said because of the security concerns. Preliminary death sentences to 21 defendants and some various jail sentences for the other 52. And then, there was chaos in the courtroom. People are shouting. People are accusing other people. Ahly fans are celebrating, but the Ahly fans' celebration was sort of controlled insofar as the Ahly fans' claims is that this goes all the way through the Ministry of Interior, which is where after the verdicts came out, Ahly fans organized a march on the Ministry of Interior, and then there was more clashes between police and ultras there, because the Ahly fans' claim is that, you either let this happen or you organize this, but either way there should be charges all the way up to the ministry, And then, meanwhile, in Port Said, there were clashes between Masry supporters, like, the people, the defendants' families and so forth, and police, leaving 2 police and 40 civilians dead and 250 injured. So add that to the casualty list. And then on March 3rd, 2013, 21 death sentences were upheld, 5 life sentences, 10 15-year sentences, including the 2 cops, 6 10-year sentences, 2 5-year sentences, 1 1-year sentences, and 21 were acquitted, including the other 7 cops and the 2 Masry club officials. Which, again, another red flag is like the cops either get two of them get 10-year sentences and then the others are acquitted. But the fucking fans get death sentences. So, there were a couple of appeals. Most of the appeals were successful. And then, so except for some of the death sentences, 10 of the death sentences were upheld. And then the fans, the Masry fans also claimed, rather the families of the Masry fans claimed that this was organized by the Ministry of Interior, that their families were innocent, or if not innocent, then at the very least lesser guilty than their bosses. The just following orders approach of legal defense that famously works every time. And then the question is, they snuck in weapons. Even if they weren't the ones organizing this, they knew something was going to happen. I don't know.
Yeah,
man.
they were they were ready to go very clearly.
Yeah. So that massacre led to the Egyptian national team basically being crippled up until Salah became really good, and that sort of helped them. But
yeah,
because before this riot, before this massacre, the Egyptian national team was always in contention for the African Cup of Nations, and that 2-year suspension of the Premier League, followed by a lot of retirements, really threw all of their sports into this flux, this sort of liminal zone, and then also for the broader politics, in the summer of 2013, in August 2013, at that point in 2013, the Muslim Brotherhood had won the presidential elections. And the Egyptian government was led by Mohammed Morsi, who was a representative of the Muslim Brotherhood, but a go-getter by the name of Sisi, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, a colonel in the Egyptian military, organized a coup in the summer of 2013, overthrowing Morsi and re-establishing a military dictatorship that lasts to this day. And in that sense, it's basically a reversion to form. And not only is it a reversion to form, but whatever influence the Muslim Brotherhood had under Mubarak that led to their influential nature during the uprising and their ability to negotiate with SCAF is completely gone because Sisi broke the back of the Muslim Brothers. Egypt has some 80,000 political prisoners, some of the highest per capita in the world, just because every Muslim Brotherhood member has been thrown in jail or exiled. So therefore that organization no longer has any cohesive power in the country.
Yeah, and Morsi, they killed him in jail, didn't they? Or he, died from...
Officially he died, but yeah.
Yeah. What was the go there? Was it torture, or did they do something to him, or
probably torture? I mean,
yeah.
Probably just
Because I mean, as well, I just imagine any I don't know, what is 60-year-old bloke or something, their heart's gonna give out pretty easily if you do the bad stuff to them.
Yeah, and there's something very sad about in 2011 and 12, you would see pictures of Hosni Mubarak and both of his imbecile sons in court. And then fast forward to 2014 and the military pardons Mubarak and his sons and they're free to go. And in the meantime, you're seeing Muslim brothers in court, in 25 brothers per, the glass area where they put all the people charged.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're just crammed in there. It's an assembly line of sentencing and throwing them in jail. And Morsi and all of his top people. And again, not a big fan of the guy, but seeing what they did to all of those people is kind of very disheartening. And if there's any question as to whether the Egyptian uprising in 2011 succeeded, that's your answer right there. We're back to square. We're not even back to square one. We're back beyond. We're negative, whatever. We're farther away from where we started under Mubarak.
Yeah. Was Morsi popular among people, or was he just kind of another guy?
Morsi?
Yeah.
He was popular. He had a natural base in the Muslim Brothers. The biggest mistake the Muslim Brothers did was trying to negotiate with the military. It's hard to, or rather, it's very too easy almost to armchair general or armchair quarterback. I say as I'm coughing, vociferously.
Wheezing.
Yeah.
from behind our computers.
Yeah, but the play should have been the same as the Turks, right? Like Erdogan was successful in neutralizing the military because Turkey is one of those other places where like the military has strong influence over the politics of the country, and they did try to overthrow Erdogan in 2016, I believe it was. That comical coup where Erdogan is FaceTiming into the studio and he's like on the fucking phone, like telling the studio presenter to like tell people to go on the streets. But yeah, like I think the like Morsi's popularity was natural. He did have a base. He also did have detractors, right? Specifically from the left and so on. Like there were natural protests against him that erupted, though I'm not sure if any of the protesters realized they were going to get hijacked by the military. But yeah, the Muslim Brotherhood's failure was up before the protest in 2013 that led to the coup, where they never really answered the big question, which was how do you neuter this state within a state, right? How do you cripple it? And the playbook is the Erdogan playbook. You get enough of your loyalists in there, get them to organize a harebrained coup, and use that coup to crack down.
Yeah. So, like, yeah, because I imagine it'd be too hard to purge, like, straight up.
Yeah, you can't purge immediately. You need a trigger event, something that can give you the moral and legal justification to start throwing generals in jail.
Yeah, or a good anti-corruption crackdown eventually.
Yeah, the Chinese model is a good model too. Like, every so often you're going to jail. Yeah, fuck off.
Yeah, I heard there's some great something that someone came up with. It's like a cognac index in China. And it's like a way of being able to tell, like, when they're doing anti-corruption crackdowns, because there are, like, some luxury goods that people, like, either start buying or stop buying, and cognac's one of them.
That's hilarious. Yeah. That is awesome.
Yeah.
That is real OSINT.
That is, I know. But it was, I mean, look, it was, like, that's far too clever for, like, I don't know, some Five Eyes moron to come up with. There's probably, like, some Chinese guy or something.
Yeah.
You know, like like with the AI thing that, like, you know, Americans, like, pumped how many billions into this stuff, and then, like, 5 Chinese guys with $100,000 just made, like, a better DeepSeek AI model.
Yeah. They're winning, folks. They're winning. It's a century of the dragon.
Actually, I should a shout out to my friend Henno's podcast Down Round. It's about tech, intersection of kind of tech and politics. And they actually did a really funny episode where they were playing around with DeepSeek when it came out. And they started asking it questions about like whether Taiwan is part of China and just try to break it.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's a good one.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the Port Said massacre, and that's the moral of the story is the deep state always gets its revenge.
Yeah, I actually remember reading a little while ago the Portuguese coach that you mentioned. I think he's kind of become an advocate for like justice because he's out of the country and he can, and he's like he donated a lot of money. I think I remember reading to the victims, and he still kind of periodically tries to, you know, get stuff happening for it, which obviously is never going to happen, especially with, you know, how reliant the US and Israel are on Egypt, on the Egyptian military. But I do believe that he's like, yeah, sort of been trying to get justice, even though, yeah, it's never going to happen.
Yeah, because, you know, the Sisi regime is too important, not just to Israel and to the US, but also specifically to the UAE. The UAE has taken up a big leading role in essentially propping up the Egyptian state.
Yeah, the UAE is like venture capital of like military. Like they take stakes in countries virtually now.
Well, yeah, they're doing the Venice thing of a maritime empire, except somehow they're even more evil.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a whole. I know everything we keep saying. Oh, we should do an episode on this, but yeah, the some of the stuff, in those Gulf countries. I mean, I don't need to tell you about that, but I know, for example, I was doing some work on some underground church movements a few years ago in the Gulf countries, and I was speaking to some, you know, people at Amnesty International. And they were like, oh, because I was saying like, oh, how come people in like Saudi Arabia will speak to me quite freely, but can't get anyone in Dubai to? And they said, oh, because the UAE is like the like torture par excellence in the Gulf states. They're like, oh, Saudi's pretty relaxed about stuff. Like people know the limits there, and they're given a lot more rope. But yeah, even in Dubai, like you cannot get anyone to talk to you about anything potentially critical of the government because they know exactly what's going to happen.
Oh yeah, I mean, not just no, but like they track dissidents in a way that not even the Saudis do. Like,
Yeah. Well, you
yeah,
can't even make calls on WhatsApp in the UAE.
yeah, it's such an awful, evil place. Like I always say, if I had a nuke, like maybe if not Tel Aviv, then I'm definitely dropping it on Abu Dhabi.
Well, yeah, I'm sure they're on the like whatever the app is now, probably listening to us as well. So also hello to our friends in Abu Dhabi.
For the right
Security
price,
forces.
I will put on the table. Let's see how much you put on the table, and I will advertise Dubai on this podcast.
Yeah, he does have a chemical engineering degree, so nuclear fission or fusion or whatever it's called is moments away.
Or chemical warfare, if you want to, deploy chemical weapons in Sudan or elsewhere.
What a pitch!
Yeah, so yeah, that's Port Said, and thank you for listening. I hope to see you again next time.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Hell to Pay. Please subscribe, like, share, tell your friends, and stay tuned for more.